down the hammer and pick up the pencil. You're about to listen to the Savvy Radio Show. Learn from real-life real estate investors, experience revealed with the Savvy Landlord as your host.
What's going on, ladies and gents? This is your friend, Steve VanCauwenbergh. You tuned in to the Savvy Radio Show. What? Yep. Ow. You know, I get questions every once in a while that are pretty cool, and they're like, hey, or they tell me, they express, hey, they want to write a book. And I say, hey, you should write a book. And actually, there's been a few people in my world that actually have taken that advice and have written a book. And I'm got a podcast guest coming on about being his life in the world of banking and retiring, and then getting into publishing, and then getting into coaching. And so I have that individual coming soon. I don't want to let the cat out of the bag, but it could be a surprise. But the question that I get often is, how do you write a book? And I'm like, you start writing, right? And it's a mental game. You're not motivated. You are motivated. Then you want to do it. Then you don't want to do it. And then time slips by. You might, and me included, I've written a quarter of books, half of books. And actually, there's a book that I'm publishing for a friend that is written, and then it's just been on stalemate for about 4 or 5 months for no reason. It is, I don't ever want to disrespect a female, but to me, it's like delivering a baby. And so you need to do it, right? I mean, you got to graduate. You got to move on. And if it's a passion in your life that you want to write a book, it could be about anything. I just give you permission. My goal was a dream that, VanCauwenbergh, you ain't never going to amount to nothing. Go learn woodworking. I'm not really good at English. Obviously, you can hear the way I talk. It's not grammatically correct. But I did have a dream, and I did write a book, and it is a process. I did hire someone. We worked on it every day, twice a week. We met, and I worked on it every day for 9 months, and it was a labor, but it was worth it. And one of my main reasons was it was a dream, because in my world of growing up, it was impossible to do at my skill set, learning disabilities, and I just wanted to prove the world wrong. That was reason number one. And then reason number two was credibility kit. That's right, credibility kit. And it has opened a tremendous amount of doors for me, and I'm honored to be a published author. What does that mean? That means something to someone else. To me, I barely sell a copy every once in a while. It's kind of funny. Someone I want to buy a book. And I'm like, oh yeah. And then they're like, I want to sign a book. I'm like, no, you don't. It's always an awkward situation. And, when you become an author, which you should, it is not what you think it is. Money just doesn't start raining on you. It's not only that you go through the whole process of writing the book, which is this intense labor, and you rewrote the book about 10 times, and then it's done, and you finally physically get a copy in your hand, and it's like this, and that's when it really begins. That's when you have to promote it and basically sell books out of your car and take people's money and offer to speak and do all these other weird things. So it's a great endeavor if you have the stomach to endure that. But if you still do after this 2-minute too long introduction, then I'm going to throw some knowledge on you from Brian Tracy. That's right, Brian Tracy. He wrote a little one-page thing on how to write a book. And what I'm about to tell you is not from me. It is from Brian Tracy. You could probably Google this up somewhere. It's a fun thing to Google up how to write a book, because everyone has an opinion. But I truly follow Brian Tracy. I wouldn't be who I am today. Jim Rohn, Brian Tracy, Zig Ziglar, all these amazing personal development, motivational speakers. Les Brown, top of the list. And he wrote a book too. So you should write a book. And here's his little tidbit of how to write a book. There is a total of 20 of these, so we're going to knock these out pretty quick. I'll throw in what I think, and there you go. Number one, start with a message, idea, story that you really want to share with other people. My goal was, when I wrote my book, was I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, changed my life, made me a millionaire, blah, blah, blah. And, when I would buy that book for someone, they didn't tell you how to do it. Or my favorite was, he just wrote that book to make money. And I just start laughing. That book changed my life. So many times I defended Robert Kiyosaki. It's the philosophy. You have a broken philosophy, and he just told you about a different philosophy. When I read that book and I looked at it, it was like read the Bible. I was like, wow, I could be rich. I just have to buy assets. That's the message. And you didn't take it. And you got mad because you spent $12 and you read a book and you ain't rich. Come on, you had to put the work in. But start with a message. So my message was I wanted to continue on. I was so impacted by Kiyosaki. I wanted to basically write Rich Dad Poor Dad Part 2. I read the book, and this is how I did it. And it's interesting how I wrote The Savvy Landlord, and some people would message me and call me, which is, I'm always just tickled and honored. They'd be like, I feel sorry for you. I read your book, and you died all the way through. I never intended it to do that, but the goal was I wanted you that it's possible. I wanted you to know it's possible. Yes, I found 620 Northwest 31st and bought that thing at an auction for $14,500. I didn't know what the hell I was doing, and bang, bang, I did it, and I sold it for $50. The reality is you can do it. If I can do it, you can do it. And I remember the publisher was like, you sure you want to put the addresses in there? I'm like, look, man, you could find any address on the planet, any public record, assessor. Why not spoon people up, right? Everyone tries to hide, I don't know how many units you have. I'm like, you could find this stuff out. I mean, it's just not difficult. Why would you hide things? I know coaches out there in the world of this space that doesn't tell you how many units they have. I really don't tell people how many units I have because I don't really think it matters. It matters what you do with your life. If you're still working full time, then you probably doesn't matter how many units you have. Number 2, you must be an expert on that subject. You must know 10 words of every word you write. Interesting. This is him, Brian Tracy. You must know 10 words of every word you write. If you write on success, you must already be successful. If you write on money, you must already be rich. If you write on relationships, you must already be happily married. I think it was very easy for me. I just wrote about all my pains and sorrows. And I think I enjoy reading those books. That seeing you go through that and how you handled it. There's a book that I just finished reading, and I haven't done a podcast on it. It's called The Millionaire Dropout. The Millionaire Dropout. I think it's Brian Will. It is a phenomenal book, and he's a real entrepreneur, and he's in the restaurant space. And I was just fascinated how he would do no money down deals and buy a restaurant. And he had 7 restaurants, and he didn't work at them. I was like, entrepreneur, that's my middle name. And I was just enthralled by that book. Is he an expert? Probably in restaurants, but 7? I mean, the House Smith in Oklahoma City has 20 something. So what makes someone an expert? I think you could just write your experience is good enough for me. So your life is an experience. It's good enough. Or how you succeeded in certain area or how you failed, whatever the take is, but you are and you should write a book. Define your target market. Exactly who are you writing this book for? Well, I wrote my book specifically for the young real estate investor. My goal was to inspire people. My main goal was just to write the dang book and also, to give you hope and to inspire you. And I want you to have financial freedom. That was my real goal. Of course, over time, as I become a coach and now I'm into commercial real estate and a bunch of other endeavors, it's a little bit different. But I still hold true to entrepreneurism. That's just what I really think I do and love. And I am a real estate investor on the side. So make sure, define your target market. That's my client. That's why some people follow me and some people hate me. So I'm polarizing to some people because I just want to tell you what it is. It's hard work. It's not easy. It's not a get rich quick plan. Number 4, make sure that your market is large enough, containing 100,000 to 1 million potential buyers. Okay, Brian Tracy, that's a good idea. I haven't sold. I haven't sold to not even a tenth to those people, maybe 1,000 people. I don't know. I've just hit 200,000 downloads. I don't know if that means anything in the world of podcasts. I don't know what to compare it to. You can't compare it to Dan Rogan or whatever, the Rogan guy, because that dude's just millions a day. Number 5, buy, read, find everything you can about other authors, books, or articles dealing with the same subject. Absolutely. Make sure your material's different and better in at least 3 ways. Way to go, Brian Tracy. I actually use that principle. I've read everything I possibly can about landlording at the time, and I couldn't find anything in the vein that I was in, like kind of Rich Dad Poor Dad and being a landlord, but I read a ton of landlord books, and it was a good process. You should do the same. Number 6, gather all the information you will need to write your book. Do your research and homework before you start to write. Pretty simple, common sense. You know who was really good on this subject about writing a book? You can Google this up. Is John C. Maxwell. What he'd do, he would run around and get little tidbits and quotes and articles, and he would throw it in a binder, and then he would start organizing it. And when he was ready to sit down to write his book, he had a ton of material to work through. Great idea. Number 7, it kind of speaks of that. It says, organize your material into 7, 10, 12, or 21 chapters, each following a logical order from beginning to end. I kind of do that now where I sit down, this is a chapter, and these are my 4 or 5 bullet points. Sometimes I sit down, this is the concept that I'm trying to accomplish. I write these little tiny outlines. I use Trello a lot for this. Sometimes I just use a blank piece of paper, and most time I use Google Drive. Number 8, write out every key point in each chapter on a legal size writing pad. That's pretty cool. I just already spoke that beforehand. Number 9, organize your points from number 1 through to the closing part of the chapter. Do this for every chapter until you have a separate down dump of each key ideas. Basically, just like I want to talk about this house, I write out everything I want to know about that house. You get one piece of paper, and it's called a down dump or a brain dump or a throw up. I called it pillaring a long time ago. You write every key concept, every emotion. I had pain here. Why? I had success here. Why? You just go through all those scenarios until you just can exhaust it. And it's really cool is like when you go back to revisit this later, and here's a tip for you. You should schedule this into if you really want to write a book, hey, call me and I'll help you. But here's reality, or text me or message me or somehow figure it out. To get a hold of me, Facebook is not too difficult to find. It's on your phone. You hit that, type in Stephen VanCauwenbergh. It should work out. Or go to savvyinvestors.com and you can even voice your request to me or reach out to me that way. But doing it and then going back later, it gets even more inspirational when you actually started the process. Number 10, begin with chapter 1 and dictate the book in order of material you have chosen. I'm not really sure, is he telling dictate like in a recording device? That's a good idea. Once you have dictated the entire book, I'm assuming through a recording device, you have a typist type it out and give it back to you by email or disk. So I use a software, rev.com is a great one, or temi.com. And I just did that the other day. I'm kind of working on some new concepts, and I'm in the middle of training a bunch of successful investors going into commercial. And so I'm kind of using a lot of that content for future stuff. And always it's really good to digitize or transcribe as much as you can. Number 12, set up a work schedule with blocks of time, 2, 3, or 4 hours. I got ADD or something. I can't sit that long, but I do. I blocked it this morning. I got up, I read for 30 minutes of the current book I'm writing called Private Money. It's coming out hopefully by the summer. And I'm on the time frame. I'm trying to wrap it up by April 1st. And so every day, the minimum 30 minutes. Sometimes it works out to an hour. Definitely sometime in the morning. I always work. Discipline yourself and sit down at the keyboard and do it. In this case, I've already done all that part. Now I'm just reviewing it. And then when you get to the end of the road, you will be reviewing until you start crying. And then I recommend hiring someone else just to read your book for you. Okay. Number 13, edit the entire book from front to back the first time. So what he's saying there, correct the grammar and typing errors, create the necessary paragraphs. This is the longest and hardest job of editing the whole book. We can dial that up later. Let me just read it slowly so you understand. And then if you really need help, I can break that down even harder, but it's probably not the podcast for that unless you message me and you want me to go dive deeper into this. But let me just read what Mr. Brian Tracy said. Edit the entire book from front to back the first time. Correct the grammar and typing errors. Create the necessary paragraphs. This is the longest and hardest job of editing in the whole book. It is a nightmare. It is difficult. And I'm going to tell you something right now. This is the fascinating thing. I've written several books, And I'm telling you, I'll read a book, my own book, and I'll edit it like a banshee and go through it and slice and dice and blah, 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 do. And then I'll read it like seriously a month later. And I was like, who the hell wrote this shit? It's that bad. I'm like, wow. And it's even funnier now, like where I am mentally, and I can't even pull myself to read The Savvy Landlord because I'm just not even the same person that I was when I wrote that book. It's good and bad. And I've actually thought about releasing a 20-year anniversary book. It's on my mind 8 years from now. Oh, actually 10 years from now, or a 10-year anniversary, I thought. But I don't know. Life is short. Who wants to rewrite a book? Anyway, number 14, write an introduction, a preface, and acknowledgements if necessary. I love this part. And I try to start this when I'm writing. I'll think of one of my homies that encouraged me. Jeremy, he encouraged me. And so I'll write, I want to thank that dude later. You will forget when you get through this into this process, it will be difficult to remember all the people that helped you along the way. It could have been Steve VanCauwenbergh, right? That could be you. Hey, I want to thank my acknowledgement for Steve VanCauwenbergh. I listened to his podcast. And let me tell you something. It's the real deal. There is somebody in my life that I met several years ago at a random meeting. And I just sat down and I don't know how the conversation came up. And I'm like, it was, I just pushed this dude, you should write a book. Literally, that's all I said to this homeboy. And then a couple of times throughout the 10-year saga of knowing him, he was like, yeah, I'm going to go write a book. And then one day this dude really wrote a book. And I'm like, what? And he thanks me every time. It's just humbling that you never know when you can impact someone's life. And I'm taking way too long on this podcast because I want you to marinate on this because I know you have this dream. You have a dream of being a millionaire. I'm about it. And you have a dream of like maybe to go off-roading in your tent excursion in the mountains in Yellowstone. Go do it. Sometimes you just need to hear somebody say, go do it. I was hanging out with a baller investor for lunch. I mean, this dude's like 4 times bigger than me. And I was just, we're chit-chatting, having a good time, having lunch. And I'm like, blank, you should be a KP. And he just looked at me like I just spoke Jesus to him. And he was like, that was confirmation. I was like, for real? And we were just so enthralled in another conversation, but you just never know when you're going to get a confirmation. You never know when you're going to get the Holy Spirit's going to come rain on you and answer your prayer through somebody else. And don't forget to thank them. Number 15, in your second edit, damn, you're going to have more than 2. Oh, he lists them all here. In your second edit, break up the text with a heading every 2 to 3, 4 paragraphs. Make it bite-sized and easy to read. That's exactly how I didn't write my book, but that's exactly how I love the books I read now. They're almost like these mini pages. My son loves them. We're reading this book right now called the PowerPoints, and they're like entrepreneur little 1.5 page stories that are condensed down, and they're little bite-sized. Man, we read these. We could read 2 of them in about 5 minutes, and we before we go to bed, we just read about these entrepreneurs and how they killed it. And it doesn't go into details. It just goes through the hell they went through. I love the authors. I believe it's the new society of writers that are just understand that we're so over inundated by TV and text messages that we can't even keep 2 minutes of focus, these bite-sized things. So think that way. Go back on your second edit and kind of space it out, break it out, bite-size it out. Good job, Brian Tracy. I didn't do that. So hey, I should have read this before I wrote my book. Number 16, in your third edit, place a quote at the beginning of each chapter. Create 3, 5, or 7 action steps at the end of each chapter if it's a self-help book or an educational book. Damn, Tracy, I didn't do that either, but that's a great idea. That's so good, I got to say it again. You see, I should have read this. If you need a copy of these 20 bullets, let me know. Message me and I'll send it to you. Maybe I should put it up on a website. In your third edit, place a quote at the beginning of each chapter. Write 3, 5, or 7 action steps at the end of each chapter if it's self-help or an educational book. Honestly, that book I just mentioned, Millionaire Dropout or Dropout to Millionaire, something like that, Brian Will or something. He does that. He sums up every chapter and it just reinforces, I'm teaching this class, and as soon as I walk into this class, it'll be our second session, and I'm going to be like, hey, reconfirm, what'd you learn from this? And kind of recap. And you retain it better. And it also cuts to the chase if you're high D and you just want a refresher, and you can go back to the book and you just get to the end of the chapter. Come on. You feel me? Number 17. You're on your 4th edit. Oh, yes, you're going to have 4 edits, which will take much less time. Not really, because you just beat yourself up the whole time because it just, you mess something up. Polish the sentences, delete unnecessary material, and make all your final corrections. It gets hard, folks. In your 5th and final edit, completely reread the entire book from cover to cover. This takes the least amount of all time. It does not take the least amount of time. So he's right. You have to go 5 edits, sometimes more, but it's labor intensive because you're just tired of this damn material. I used to work with rock bands, and for example, I didn't work with Green Day. I dated the dude's cousin, sister. It's a long story. It doesn't matter. Maybe some other podcast, but I used to hang out with Green Day. No joke. Okay. I used to live in the East Bay. Green Day came out with Dookie and stuff, all these songs. You know what I'm talking about? Anyway, I remember hanging out with them backstage, and they just hate that damn song, but it made them so huge. So they just had to get used to play. That's exactly what it's like when you want to write a book. I'm telling you, when you get to this 5th and final edit, you're going to have to go over it again, and you're going to hate it. It's going to be murder. And I usually try to hire someone at that point in time. I try to pay somebody $100 to read a book of mine before I kind of get to the final edit, even before I even get it to a publisher, even before I get it to an editorial dude. Again, I can walk you through this later. And then number 19, the entire process above requires 50 to 100 hours of work once you've gathered all the material. I don't know about that. I didn't really track it. I can tell you it took me 9 months, probably around that, at least 50 hours, maybe 60, 80. I don't know. Brian Tracy, you're an expert. You know, he's got so many bestseller books. Might as well follow this little plan. That's what it is. Someone just laid out a plan. Just follow the plan. And number 20, always play gentle classical music in the background. Best of all, you get headphones and listen to classical music while you work. Music makes you more alert, creative, and fluent. Absolutely. I'm not into classical, but guess what I do? I just go to Spotify and just put background jazz, and I just get juicy. I get to the old school jazz. It just works for me. So hopefully this encouraged you. It's 2022. I know somebody that listens to this podcast and I'm going to write a book. Well, this is your year. You're going to do it. You're going to write a book and you're going to go buy assets. I can tell you right now, go write a book. Let me know. I'd love to help you. Peace out. Go buy assets.
Thanks for listening to the Savvy Radio Show. Glide online and listen to our other motivating episodes at savvyradioshow.com. Connect on Twitter @LandlordBook and always be buying assets.